Hello, this is Josh Teeting from Monastery Dropouts, where we focus on inner peace and we try to keep it real to our lives here in the modern age. And we're joined by Daniel Boss. And so we just want to talk about a few things. In this video, Dan's gonna talk about kind of like a life lesson, and then we'll go more into how we ended up becoming monks. So, yeah, Dan, can you talk about the things that you were talking about earlier about like a life lesson for everyone?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Um, so I just wanted to talk about how everybody in this world is doing their best. If you think about it in your own life, every moment, even if you totally screwed up, even if you said, you know what, I'm not going to do good things today, that was the best you could do. Uh, and I've heard this said by different masters in different ways. Um, my most recent teacher would just say, "Hey, everybody's doing their best," and it's true. There's another enlightened master who I like, and the way he says it is, you can only operate at the level of consciousness you're at. If you expect somebody to operate above that, it's not going to happen. They have to get to a new level of consciousness. And the third way I'd heard this described, which actually for me, something about it really clicked. It was Dr. David Hawkins. I never met the man, but he was amazing if you look him up on YouTube. And the way he said it was, there is no cause. Everything is just being what it is in the context of its environment. And when I heard that, I just thought, oh, right, everything is just being what it is
Mhm.
in the context of its environment. If you put somebody in a really harsh environment, they're going to behave differently than if they're living in Shangri-La. That's just the way we are. And for me, that was really helpful in just letting go of judgment of people. And so, if any one of those phrases resonates with you, I would recommend just kind of reflecting on it.
Yeah, and I
Just
think I think that's the challenging part with interacting with other people, like no matter what you're doing, if it's your family or at work or anywhere, is that what seems like common sense to us as individuals a lot of times it doesn't for them it may not be common sense. And so I think when you had talked to those teachers, did you talk to them because you were frustrated with someone else, or was it for another reason?
it was those were just lessons just given as in general um, seminars, just kind of
Oh,
given to everybody.
yeah.
Um, there may have been one or two times they had to scold me.
Yeah. Well, and so the interesting thing about that, there's multiple ways to interpret it, but I think we can give a lot more of a pass to other people and not judge them as much if we understand that they're working from where they can and they're trying to do the best that they can. Um, I think um, I think the way that the Bible talks about it is like for not judging others is that there's like this reciprocal energy where whatever energy you're putting out into the world, it's coming back to you. And
Right.
so the verse that I'm thinking of is Matthew 7. And that verse talks about by which measure you judge, you're judged back in that way. And I think a lot of conservative Christians or a lot of Christians who believe in the Bible, they view that as though like God's going to judge them. But the way I view that verse is that what the energies that you send out, they come back to you. And I'll be honest with you, there's been many times in my life that I've judged another person, and then within weeks, I find myself doing something very, very similar in a very similar context. And then I'm like, oh my God, I was like, in my head, I was like degrading that person because I was so upset. And then now I'm doing the exact same thing. And then I'm feeling the repercussions because of it. And that's just the universal teacher of life. You know, it's always trying to show us how to move into the better path. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in that idea that it's best not to judge if possible. And it's funny because the monk that we had traveled to Burma with, he always said, like over and over and over, no comparison, no judgment.
Right.
And from my own context, observing the world and viewing it as an observer, that's where you find the most peace. Like there's no judgment. You're letting your mind not try to attach to things or get upset about things, and you're just the watcher observing things. And so
Right.
that judgment and comparison just falls away because you're in this divine state where you're just loving and watching.
Exactly. Yeah, judgment just disappears in that state. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there, that's right. There was one teacher that I was complaining to about somebody I lived with, and they don't do this right. They don't do that right. And that was that, that was like one of the first times and they confronted me. They said, no, you have, that's who they are. That's just where they are at now. You have to recognize that and allow that. And I was stunned, because I thought it was a lower way of being that this person was exhibiting. And they just said, look, that's just who they are. You should not judge them. You should not try and force them to change. And
Yeah.
they were right. They were absolutely right.
Well,
So,
and I think what ultimately it's the idea that you find the most peace when you control the things that you can control and you let go of the things you can't control. And whether the person's operating at a different like energy level or a lower or higher, it doesn't matter because for you to find peace, you have to let go of what they're doing and allow them to do what they need to do. And um, yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, though.
right. And then there's something that follows from that, which I had just been watching an inspirational video with David Hawkins this morning, and uh, he said that the only real sin is ignorance. And when I thought about it, I was like, oh, right. If everybody's doing their best in every situation, the only reason they screw up is because there's something they don't understand. And I think if you look at your own life, that's generally true, in nearly every situation. And so I think that may be one other thing that makes it easier to forgive people. Just that, hey, they don't know any better. They're doing their best, and the only real sin is ignorance. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even looking back at our own lives, it's like if you came across who you were when you were 18, I think every person who's over 25 would be like, oh my gosh, like it would be hard to even talk to myself. And like, it might be even embarrassing.
yeah,
And,
exactly.
and actually thinking about that, it's kind of funny because this memory just came up in my head, but I remember I was like reading a journal when I was like 22. I was reading a journal of my that I had written when I was like 18, and I actually just burned it because I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed by like the things I was so focused on. And it was someone I was attracted to or something like that. And now it's kind of like humorous. It's like it's just
Yeah,
something that you do in your youth or whatever. But
I
there's so many things like that. And um, there's another concept too where um, people are products of their environment and they're products of themselves. And so the idea is that if you grew up with that history and those previous lives and like the history of that person throughout their entire life, that you would do similar things as them with what they have. Let's just do you want to move on and do you want to start talking about do you want to start tell us about how you moved into the idea of being a monk or how you started along the spiritual path?
Yeah, yeah. I think I want to continue sharing about my journey just to get to a spiritual path at all. And it came from I had concluded in about middle school or something that I thought, I became an atheist, and I just thought, nah, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing evidence of the divine in the world. And I think for some people who, I mean, maybe advanced or maybe just sensitive people, this is kind of a rough world to be in. And, in our current state of the world, it's probably even rougher than when I was a kid. But I think a lot of people who are sensitive and they're very rational, smart people, if they don't have experiences beyond what their senses, our five senses can detect, they conclude, well, I don't think there is a God. I don't see any evidence for it. So that was the place I was at in junior high, and but I had a couple parents who, when I mentioned that to them, they said, "Well, we've seen a few things, Dan, in our lives," and they gave me some very specific examples of miraculous things that had happened, and they were basically the only people in the world I would have trusted to say these things, and I would not question their honesty, because they'd never tried to really impose belief systems on me before. Um, so the first was that my grandmother had my parents go to a psychic, and the psychic, when she met my parents, she said, "Well, I see um, three births and and four children." And I was born first, and then my sister, and then my mom got pregnant again with twins. My parents thought when this lady told them that, they thought, well, maybe we're gonna adopt a baby. They thought that was the meaning of it, and that was just what the woman said. Just saw three births and two or four children, and that played out. I don't know what the odds of that are, but not high. And
No.
then the second thing the psychic said was that my dad would be very good with computers. And computers, this must have been like 1975. Nobody knew about computers. I mean, they were brand new and did very little, not anything like today. And my dad took one computer course in college. And from that one class, he wrote all the programming for the wastewater plant he was a superintendent at. And it was such good programming that another municipality, the engineers actually copied the code when they were visiting one day. And so years later, my dad visited this other plant where the engineers had taken some notes on his coding. And he said, "Hey, that's my program you're using to run the plant." Oh man, I thought that was hilarious. And then there was one other thing that happened, and it was to my mom. And there's actually other miracles that have happened to them, but these are the two that they told me that transformed my belief, just kind of knocked me out of the atheistic belief. So the second one was that my mom worked at a yoga retreat center in northern Michigan, and there was a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda there, Oliver Black, who was the spiritual director at this camp, this yoga camp. Uh, and one day my mom was lighting the pilot on the stove, gas stove, and it blew up in her face. Burned all her hair off. My dad said she had bad burns on her face. And they said, "Oh, go get Yogacharya." That was Oliver Black's title. And so he ran down, and Oliver Black came down, and he looked at my mom. I think he grabbed her face and he blew in her face. And he said, "You won't feel any pain." And I said, "Well, did you?" And she said, "No, I never felt any pain." And, I said, "Dad, were these like kind of just like minor, very minor burns on her face?" And my dad was like, "No, they were serious burns." And you would never know my mom had burns on her face. You see, usually people who have their face burned, there's some sort of scarring or something that their skin doesn't look right, and her skin looked completely normal. That got me thinking like, okay, well, maybe there's something I don't know about the universe.
Yeah.
Something
Those,
more.
yeah, those are very
More to
incredible
it.
stories. Yeah. So did you start like what did you start looking into at that time in your life? Did you start looking into stuff or did you just
At
did
that
it kind of
time,
change you from an atheist to a theist?
it changed me to an agnostic. I just said, well, okay, I don't know. There's obviously things I don't know, and
Mm.
I can't make any sense of it though. I couldn't make sense what people were telling me who were Christians didn't make sense to me. A lot just was not making sense, and so I just pursued science. I was very interested in science, and and it was actually my interest in science that triggered a spiritual experience. I had gotten a book about the fourth dimension, and I was reading about it, trying to learn because science has discovered like 10 different dimensions. That's a fact. And so I was trying to learn the concept, and I thought, okay, these dimensions exist, so maybe I can sense them somehow. I just had this feeling like I bet I could sense them somehow. I mean, they're there. So I thought, well, maybe if I meditate, and I didn't know how to meditate. I'd never read a book on meditation. And also, I had back pain. Like if I were to sit cross-legged, my back would start to hurt. So I just laid in my bed when I was gonna go to sleep. Instead of going to sleep, I just laid awake and I just kind of sat in my body and just tried to remain awake and still, and as still as I could be. Uh, and after a time, it might have been an hour, might have been half an hour. I started to not feel my body, and I started to feel this space around me, and it felt really good. It felt freeing. Uh, and
How old were you? How old were you at this time?
I was 19 or 20. I think maybe I was 20. Uh, yeah. And it was, and then I started to do that every night for a while because it was such a cool experience. And,
I'm just like imagining this like I don't know what meditation is, but I'm gonna try to do it. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, my body's gone and I just feel amazing bliss. I'm like, I don't think that happens to a lot of people.
I guess not. I told everybody about it, and some people had very different reactions. Some people were like, "Dude, you're crazy." Other people were like, "You've been taking too many drugs," which I will say at this point, I've never taken a drug in my life. I never have. I mean, I've had drinks of alcohol, but not nothing else. No psychedelics or marijuana, anything. It's just this is it's just all produced naturally somehow. And but then from then, because I was telling everybody, like I said, and my mom said, "Oh, you should read about Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi, and you should go to that yoga retreat center up north." And so that got, and the other thing was that my grandmother was very much into Paramahansa Yogananda, self-realization fellowship. So all her lessons that she had gotten from self-realization fellowship were in a closet in our house. So I just started reading those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fascinating. But that's what got me started on the path, and I still think back to that with some joy, and
Yeah.
it's a fond memory.
Yeah. Yeah. There must have been a natural inclination somewhere deep inside you. Because I think a lot of people, if they had heard those stories that their mom telling, they'd be like, oh, that's an interesting story. But yeah, I find it interesting that you moved in that direction because of those things.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. It is interesting. And yeah, and how about your experience toward meditation? I know you had mentioned a little bit about, you were drawn to the Christian teachings because it sounded like, you needed some structure in your life, and you just wanted, I think you wanted a path, you wanted knowledge, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Well, let's I think since this video has gone about 20 minutes, why don't we close
Oh,
up
okay.
and then yeah, maybe we'll make a second part for this video and
Sounds
go from
good.
there. So thank you everyone for joining Dan and I on Monastery Dropouts, and we hope to see you again for part 2 of this video. Have a good night.